Let's go. I got to talk some UFC. Here we go. A summary and analysis of UFC 304. Let's get it, guys. There was 5 fights on this main card. Manchester was a very lucky city as this was a very entertaining UFC pay-per-view. I did tell you guys in my last UFC video that I would be letting you guys know when the next fight is worth a watch, and that is going to be UFC 305. Every number pay per view, in my opinion, is a great starting point for those who are interested in hopping on board the UFC train. So, UFC 305 will be on Saturday, August 17th, and you will see in the main event the UFC middleweight champion, Dricus du Plessis, defend against former champion Israel Adesanya. Both are very entertaining fighters. So let's get into it. Sorry, there was a fly. Um, Fly wanted its 5 seconds of fame up in here. Not happening. Swoop. Um, Here we go, man. We got 5 fights. We started with the number 6th ranked fighter, Arnold Allen, in the featherweight division, taking on the number 10th ranked fighter in the featherweight division, Giga Chikaste. You guys know how it is with my summaries and analyses of UFC shows. There's a lot of names that I butcher, and I would like to apologize to the fighter for that. Don't beat me up. Anyway, as I said, this show was in Manchester, and what was very interesting before I get into this is they actually had this show start on regular US time, which means this show basically ran throughout the night over there for the fans in the UK. By the time the show was over, I believe it was 5 in the morning, and I think the show started at about 1 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2 in the morning, something like that, guys. They went ahead and adhered to the USA's regular show time, even though they were filming this in the UK, which means these guys were fighting in the middle of the night. These fans were in the arena in the middle of the night. This show basically went from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., roughly, if I'm not mistaken, like I said. But nonetheless, guys, we get the hometown guy, Arnold Allen, who is a British brawler, if you will. He's a very entertaining fighter. I personally love watching Arnold Allen fight. He unfortunately lost his past 2 fights, but he's able to get back on track here with a victory. This fight goes the distance, but the decision victory goes to Arnold Allen, who I like to see get a win here in front of the UK crowd. And we'll see if Arnold Allen is able to get another win, maybe 2 more wins, and go ahead and challenge for that featherweight championship of the UFC. Next, man, we got 2 unranked fighters on this second fight of the card. And it's a bit, I'll say this is the least interesting fight on the card, but that doesn't mean that it was boring. It does go the distance once again, goes all 3 rounds as Gregory Rodriguez defeats Christian Leroy Duncan, 2 middleweight fighters here. And like I said, I feel like this is a fight that was supposed to happen on a UFC show that wasn't a pay-per-view, but sometimes in the fight game, it just ends up that a fight like this ends up on a main card of a pay-per-view. So let's get into these last 3 fights, man. We got 3 more fights here, and all 3 of these fights were awesome, guys. The third fight on the card, Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on Bobby Green, the 15th ranked fighter in the lightweight division. Paddy Pimblett is one of the youngest and hottest up-and-coming fighters in that division and in the UFC in general. I'm sure you've seen clips of Paddy the Baddy somewhere, but he is able to, in the first round, submit Bobby Green. And it's real interesting because, as you guys know, UFC and WWE are now under the same ownership, which is why I'm talking to you about UFC right now. But they really did play into Paddy Pimblett being the hometown hero, as Bobby Green during these pre-fight promos was basically sounding like a heel. He was totally working his heel stick for this UK crowd because it's all about putting on a show. So it's really cool to see UFC utilize some of those philosophies that WWE constantly made millions off of over the decades. It's really cool to see some of that come into UFC, specifically here with Paddy Pimblett and Bobby Green. But nonetheless, guys, Paddy Pimblett in the first round submits Bobby Green, makes a statement. You know, we were all wondering, is Patty the Batty gonna fold under pressure? Is his time coming up? Is he on borrowed time? Is he going to get knocked out at some point? No. Statement made, man. He submits Bobby Green in the first round, and the hometown goes. The hometown crowd goes wild, man. This crowd was crazy. I would really recommend checking this out on YouTube. This crowd went hype for Patty the Batty, and it was really cool to see. But these are our first three fights, and now we go into our last two fights, which are championship fights, as we have another hometown boy of the UK, Tom Aspinall, the UFC interim heavyweight champion, knocking out Curtis Razor Blades within 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, man. It was real interesting. And Tom Aspinall is such a fantastic fighter. He's really just a upstanding human being from what we see in the octagon, what we see in the interviews. I don't know the man personally, so I'm not like fully endorsing him, but I am saying when I hear him talk, when I see him fight, it's inspiring, and I can't help but be a fan of Tom Aspinall. Anyway, the UFC interim heavyweight champion retains in 30 seconds, gets dude on the ground, Curtis Blades, and just starts wailing on him for a technical knockout. He then does call out the current UFC heavyweight champion, John Jones. And we will see if Dana White wants to put together John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. That'll be very interesting, guys. Very interesting to see Tom Aspinall just have another electric fight. He won the interim heavyweight championship with an electric fight a few months ago. And here he is coming back at it again, knocking somebody out within 30 seconds. So, yeah, man, that is the sub-penultimate main event of UFC 304. We now get into the main event, which is Leon Edwards defending the UFC welterweight championship against Belal Muhammad. And this was a chess match of a fight, guys. Leon Edwards is a chess match of a fighter, if I do say so myself, but he got outdone in his home country against Belal Muhammad. This fight went all 5 rounds. UFC championship fights go 5 rounds. And Belal Muhammad won by decision, new UFC welterweight champion. After getting the past 2 fights finished in the first round, it was nice to see a full 5-round chess match, if you will. It was a hell of a pay-per-view, guys. It was a hell of a pay-per-view. It was honestly this is one of my favorite pay-per-views that I've seen from UFC in a while, and I know 305 is also going to be very entertaining. Again, Saturday, August 17th, we got Israel Adesanya going for the UFC middleweight championship. Dricus du Plessis is in his way of that. Nonetheless, guys, this has been UFC 304 summary and analysis. I'll catch you guys later.